Continue with your renal function tests. Under this, we will take a look at your estimated GFR as well as your tubular reabsorption tests and tubular secretion tests. Glomerular filtration rates, they are written in eGFR, while your calculated or your measured GFR is stated as mGFR accordingly. Okay, your estimated glomerular filtration rates, they are recommended for laboratories. Okay, it is recommended for laboratories that to calculate the eGFR or the estimated glomerular filtration rates whenever a serum creatinine is performed on patients aged 18 years old and older. Because of course your eGFR, this ones can be utilized to assist your healthcare providers in detecting chronic kidney disease. Okay, and so yes, it is utilized. It can be helpful in assisting your healthcare provider in detecting chronic kidney disease, particularly in individuals who are high risk of developing kidney disease. Okay, examples of these individuals who have a high risk of developing kidney disease are those with hypertension. Okay, and so please note, nabanggit ko na po sa inyo the progression. Okay, and so in case there is a hypertension, what else? So individuals with diabetes, and then individuals with cardiovascular disease. Okay, or uh, individual with a family history of kidney disease. Okay, and so these are high risk individuals, or these are individuals with high risk of developing a kidney disease. Okay, your estimated glomerular filtration rates. Please note that the formulas utilized for eGFR, they can be programmed into automated instruments. They can be programmed into into automated instruments. That is why, okay, and so somewhat, it is not necessary for you to do a lot of calculations in this case. Okay, your estimated glomerular filtration rates, they are valuable when there is a need to prescribe medications that require adequate clearance. Okay? Because of course, okay, and so somewhat you also need to check, okay, the viability of the kidney in this case. Okay, and so because again, medications, some medications are toxic to the kidneys or they can damage the kidneys. Anyway, your estimated glomerular filtration rate equations, they are superior to serum creatinine alone. Okay, and so eGFR equations, they are superior to serum creatinine alone because they include variables of race, age, and gender. Okay, and so these are included in eGFR calculation. Okay, and so because if you only base it in serum creatinine, if you only base it in your serum creatinine levels, okay, and so it is somewhat not very enough. Glomerular filtration rates, they are not accurate for children because eGFR, estimated glomerular filtration rates, are calculated for an average body size. Please note, okay, and yes, your eGFR is classified into the following stages based on the kidney disease. Okay, stage 1, CKD, the estimated GFR is greater than 90 ml per minute per 1.73 meters. Okay, and then the rest. For stage 5, the eGFR, the clearance rate is less than 15 ml per minute per 1.73 meters accordingly. Okay, and so meaning you have more. Okay, in this case, your kidneys, they are not able to clear substances anymore. They are not able to remove substances or waste products in the blood anymore. Okay, and so this is end stage renal disease. Anyway, this a modification of diet in renal disease study. Okay, and so this one is a formula utilized to calculate your estimated glomerular filtration rates. But then please note that it is modified several times to make it more accurate and standardized. Again, it is modified several times to make it more accurate and standardized. Okay, and so this is your original formula. Okay, and so somewhat this is your original formula still. Okay, this formula, this MDRD study formula is recommended for use when the serum creatinine methods do not compare to the IDSM standard or to your isotope dilution mass spectrometry standard. Okay, and yes, this MDRD study formula utilizes additional variables and does not include the body weight of an individual. MDRD isotope dilution mass spectrometry. This is actually the recommended method by National Kidney Disease Education Program. And yes, your MDRD IDMS is designed to essentially equal the results that compare to the reference body size of 1.73 meter squared. Please note that MDRD isotope dilution mass spectrometry is utilized when the creatinine method or when the method employed to measure the creatinine levels is calibrated to the isotope dilution mass spectrometry reference method. If the method employed to measure the creatinine levels is not calibrated to IDMS, then of course do not use this formula. Okay, and so if your method like the old Jaffe reaction, okay, then do not use the MDRD isotope dilution mass spectrometry. Okay, and so yes, please note kasi that the Jaffe reaction measures creatinine by reacting it with alkaline picrate. The problem with your Jaffe reaction is that many non-creatinine substances such as ketones and others also react with picrate, producing a colored, producing a complex that will cause a false increase in the measured creatinine. Okay, and so yes, current laboratory methods employed to measure creatinine levels use enzymatic assays. Of course, enzymatic assays rely on enzymes. And enzymes, of course, they recognize creatinine more specifically than your chemicals. Okay, and so thereby there is a reduction of interference. Okay, and so if you still don't know, please note that isotope dilution mass spectrometry, this is the gold standard for measuring creatinine levels. Okay, this is the gold standard for measuring creatinine levels. And yes, it is accurate and specific. That is why it is utilized to calibrate routine assays or routine methods accordingly. Okay, and so please note that enzymatic assays match IDMS values more closely. Again, because your enzymatic methods, they are more specific than your Jaffe reaction. Okay, and of course, they show a better linearity across clinically relevant concentrations of the measured product. Okay, and so again, if your what you call this, if your method employed to measure the creatinine levels is enzymatic or somewhat calibrated to IDMS method, then you utilize this. Okay, you utilize this formula. Okay, you utilize this formula. Okay, and so that is, again, your MDR, the isotope dilution mass spectrometry, is recommended by National Kidney Disease Education Program. Rough and Gold. Okay, still, this is an EGFR method to measure EGFR. It is your Cockcroft and Gold formula is utilized to document eligibility for reimbursement by the Medicare and Stage Renal Disease Program. Okay, and it is used to evaluate patient placement on kidney transplant lists. Okay, of course, that is in the US. Please note that the formula is this one. Okay, and so formula for your estimated GFR is this one accordingly. Okay, and so if the patient is female, you multiply the results by 0.85. If the patient is female, you multiply the result by 0.85. Your Schwartz and modified Conan-Barrett formula, which is utilized for children, Let's take a look at the role of albumin, or yes, presence of albumin in the urine, okay, in evaluating your glomerular integrity. Okay, because normally there should be no albumin in the urine. Again, normally there should be no albumin in the urine. Okay, and so but then what happens here? Okay, and so in case of hyperglycemia, or in case of, in individuals with diabetes mellitus, your increased blood sugar levels can cause structural changes in the glomerulus. Okay, and so what are the structural changes? It can cause glomerular basement membrane thickening, or thickening of the GBM. It will hyperglycemia will cause injury to your podocytes, and eventually, of course, it will cause a loss of your podocytes. And aside from that, your hyperglycemia will cause an expansion of the mesangium. All of this phenomenon will make the filtration barrier, or will make the glomerulus more permeable, okay, especially to proteins like albumin. Okay, especially to proteins like albumin. Please note that your albumin, again, it is relatively small, with a somewhat 70,000 Daltons, 67,000 Daltons molecular weight. It is negatively charged. And yes, your albumin, it is one of the first substances to leak through a damaged glomerulus. And yes, when you say microalbuminuria, there are low levels of increased urine albumin excretion. Okay, and so there are low levels of increased urine albumin excretion. So, microalbuminuria often appears before any rise in serum creatinine, or there is a decrease in GFR. Microalbuminuria accordingly often appears before any rise in the serum creatinine, or decrease in estimated GFR. Please note that albuminuria, again, sabi natin, it appears early in diabetic nephropathy. Okay, it appears early in diabetic nephropathy. So please note that monitoring of your urine albumin helps detect kidney damage early enough for effective treatment. Okay, and so monitoring your albumin in the urine helps detect kidney damage early enough for effective treatment. Again, presence of microalbuminuria in the urine means the kidneys are damaged. Okay, and so please note, monitoring of your albuminuria will help in early detection and treatment of nephropathy in diabetic patients. Okay, that is the role of albuminuria in uh, detecting or establishing the integrity of the glomerulus. If albuminuria is, or if there is, if albuminuria is detected, then it means that the glomerulus is somewhat damaged. Take a look at your tubular reabsorption tests or your concentration tests. Okay, please note that the loss of your tubular reabsorption capability is often the first renal function to be affected in renal disease. Again, tubular reabsorption capability is often the first function to be affected in renal disease. So, of course, you have your concentration tests. Your concentration tests, these are tests to determine the ability of the tubules to reabsorb the essential salts and water that have been non-selectively filtered by the glomerulus. So, in this case, please note that the specific gravity of the ultrafiltrate present in the Bowman space is 1.010. And yes, it will enter the tubules still with a specific gravity of 1.010. Or in short, the ultrafiltrate that enters the renal tubules has a specific gravity of 1.010. Okay? During the process of, as the fluid or as the ultrafiltrate moves through the renal tubules, tubular reabsorption will take place, of course, and tubular reabsorption here will increase the specific gravity of the fluid. Okay, and so substances are reabsorbed, causing an increase in the specific gravity of the fluid. That is why the specific gravity should be greater than 1.010. Okay, the specific gravity should be greater than 1.010. But then please note that it is not always the case. Okay, it is not always the case. The specific gravity of your fluid is not always 1.0 or not always greater than 1.010. Again, because please note that the what you call this concentrating ability of the concentrating ability of the tubules is determined by your body state of hydration. It is determined by your body state of your hydration. Okay, so in what do you call so to check your renal tubular reabsorptive function, concentrating concentration tests or controlled water intake procedures are employed to check the concentrating ability of the kidneys. Okay, so again, your concentrating ability of the kidneys during fluid deprivation is dependent on, okay, one, functioning renal tubules. Please note this is during controlled water intake procedures. Okay, and so during controlled water intake procedures, you have here your influencing factors. Okay, and so two, the concentrating ability of the kidney tubules during controlled water intake procedures. One is a functioning renal tubule, another is your antidiuretic hormone, and then of course, another one is your response of the tubules to antidiuretic hormone, response to your ADH. Okay, so in controlled water intake procedures, the first step is, of course, you control the water intake. You restrict the patient with fluid intake. Okay, and so you restrict the patient with fluid intake for 12 hours. Okay, you restrict the patient with a fluid intake for 12 hours. And then after 12 hours, okay, usually this one is done after dinner. No, after dinner sa gabi. Okay? After 12 hours, the urine osmolality is measured. Okay? After 12 hours, the urine osmolality of the patient is measured. If the urine osmolality is 800 milliosmoles per kilogram or it is greater than 800 milliosmoles per kilogram, then the result is normal. What does that mean? If normal, then you discontinue the test. Okay, you discontinue the test. It means that the kidney tubules, of they are capable of concentrating your ultrafiltrate. Okay? They are capable of concentrating your ultrafiltrate. Okay, and so because again, your concentration tests, it will check the proper functioning of your renal tubules, okay, response of the tubules to your ADH and the ADH itself. Okay, again, in your concentration tests or in your controlled water intake procedures, it measures or it checks the proper functioning of the components of your tubules or the proper functioning of the components of your tubular reabsorption, which are the renal tubules, if the functioning renal tubules, response of the tubules to antidiuretic hormone and antidiuretic hormone levels. Okay? So, in concentration, okay, and so after restricted fluid intake of 12 hours, and you measured the urine osmolality, yielded 800 milliosmoles per kilogram or greater than it is normal. It means that your kidney tubules, they are capable of they are capable of concentrating your ultrafiltrate. And yes, if that is the result, you discontinue the test. If not naman, if the result is abnormal, if the result is less than 800 milliosmoles per kilogram, then you continue the procedure. How will you do it? You restrict the patient for 2 hours. Okay, and so extend the restriction for 2 hours. And yes, okay, and so again, if abnormal, you extend the restriction for 2 hours, and then you measure after 2 hours, of course, you measure the urine and serum osmolality. You measure the urine and serum osmolality. Okay, if the urine osmolality is 800 milliosmoles per kilogram or greater, then it is normal. Okay, meaning discontinue the test. Okay, discontinue the test. Or if the urine to serum osmolality ratio is 3:1 or greater, then it is normal. You discontinue the test. Okay, and so if you have the following values, okay, after the extended 2 hours, if you have urine to serum osmolality ratio of 3:1 or greater, then it means there is a normal tubular reabsorptive function. Or if there is a urine osmolality of 800 milliosmoles per kilogram or greater, it is normal, or meaning there is a normal tubular reabsorptive function. What if the result is abnormal? Or what if the result is less than 800 milliosmoles per kilogram? Okay, if abnormal or if the result is less than 800 milliosmoles per kilogram, then there may be problem with ADH. Okay, and so there is the problem probably is antidiuretic hormone. So what is the next step? The next step is to administer antidiuretic hormone. Administer antidiuretic hormone. Okay, so after administering antidiuretic hormone, you collect serum and urine after 2 and 4 hours. You collect both serum and urine after 2 hours, and then you collect another serum and urine after 4 hours. Of course, you measure the urine osmolality, or you measure the osmolality of the two samples. Okay, so if the result, okay, if the urine osmolality is increased, if the urine osmolality is increased, then the kidneys responded to antidiuretic hormone. So the problem, so the problem here is there is a lack of production, or there is an inadequate antidiuretic hormone. So in this case, it is a neurogenic diabetes insipidus. Neurogenic diabetes insipidus or central diabetes insipidus. Because again, please note there is lack of EDH. Balikan po natin. So what organ, or yes, what organ produces your antidiuretic hormone? Your antidiuretic hormone is produced by your hypothalamus and stored in the pituitary. Okay, so in this case, there is a lack of ADH production in the hypothalamus. And yes, if this is the case, you term this one as neurogenic diabetes insipidus or your central diabetes insipidus. Okay, what about if the urine osmolality is decreased? Again, after administration of antidiuretic hormone and there is a response, there is an increase in the urine osmolality, then your problem, there is no production of ADH and it is a neurogenic DI. What if the urine osmolality is decreased? Okay, wala pa rin, walang effect. Or what if the urine osmolality is decreased? It does not respond to ADH. Then it is nephrogenic DI. If the urine osmolality is decreased, or it means that the kidneys do not respond to ADH, then it is nephrogenic diabetes insipidus. The problem in diabetes insipidus or in nephrogenic diabetes insipidus is that there is a problem with the receptors of vasopressin, or there is problems with vasopressin receptors in the renal tubule, or problem with aquaporin 2 channels in the renal tubule, in the collecting duct. Okay, at the site of action of ADH. Okay, that is for your controlled fluid intake procedure. Okay. So in case of polyuria is either there is an increase, there is either caused by increase in water intake or problems in antidiuretic hormone. Okay, and so as what we said earlier, in case of neurogenic diabetes insipidus, there is a problem with the production or secretion of ADH. So there is either there is a problem with the production in the hypothalamus, or there is a production with the secretion in the pituitary gland. Okay, and so pwede naman po na hindi siya ma-secrete. The hypothalamus, or yes, the hypothalamus is producing enough ADH, which is stored in the pituitary gland, but then the problem is the secretion portion. Baka hindi siya nasisikret. So those are possible cases in case of diabetes insipidus. Okay, in nephrogenic DI, there is a lack of response to ADH. Probably the receptors to antidiuretic hormone are dysfunctional. Okay, and yes, okay, your what you call this controlled water intake procedures that we discussed earlier will differentiate will differentiate between neurogenic and nephrogenic diabetes insipidus. Of course, again, your water deprivation tests, it will evaluate the ability of the tubules to selectively reabsorb and secrete solutes. Okay, and so yes, actually, what the ones that I discussed earlier actually is a water deprivation test or a controlled water intake that will again differentiate neurogenic from nephrogenic diabetes insipidus. Of course, okay, sabi natin, in diabetes insipidus, there is an increased urine volume and uh, low osmolality or low solute concentration. So your water deprivation test, please note that it is not used today. Okay, and so why? Because the information provided by specific gravity measurement is most useful as a screening procedure accordingly. And yes, what is utilized today is a quantitative measure of your solutes, which is best done using osmometry. Okay? Water deprivation tests is not used today again po. And yes, it is for screening. Okay, again, the information obtained from water deprivation test or information provided by or obtained by using specific gravity measurement is most useful as a screening procedure. And yes, quantitative measure is best done using osmometry. Using osmometry. Okay, and so you have your Fishberg and Mosenthal procedures here. For your Fishberg, it measures urine-specific gravity after 24-hour fluid deprivation. Okay, after 24-hour fluid deprivation. And the normal value is 1.025 specific gravity. Okay, and so imaginein mo naman. Okay, and so you will restrict fluid intake sa pasyente mo 24 hours. Okay, and so baka mamaya mamatay na siya, no? Okay, anyway, for your Mosenthal, the volume and specific gravity comparison of the and night urine sample is employed for your Mosenthal. Okay, and so nighttime urine has a 1.020 specific gravity as the normal one. Okay, and so accordingly, these ones are not utilized today because quantitative measure is best done using osmometry. Okay? And so, hindi na po specific gravity. Milliosmoles per kilogram na po ang reporting. Ganun po in case of osmometry. Okay? Let's take a look at your osmolality and colligative properties. Your osmolality is the measure of the number of dissolved particles per kilogram of solvent. Or again, osmolality is the number of the number of particles in per kilogram of solvent. Osmolality again, that is the number of particles per kilogram of solvent. And the unit of measurement is, or osmolality is expressed in milliosmoles per kilogram. It is expressed in milliosmoles per kilogram. Please note that osmolality reflects the particle concentration. It reflects the particle concentration. It is not affected by the size of the particle, the molecular weight of the particle, or the type of the particle. Okay, in osmolality, okay, and so you count a particle as one. Okay, and so it is not affected by molecular weight. It is not affected by the size or molecular radius. Okay, that is for osmolality. Okay, and so yes, it measures the dissolved particles, the number of dissolved particles. Okay, so you count even if, okay, and so let's say for example, Okay, the dissolved solutes in a solution is are actually uh, chloride, sodium, glucose, protein. Okay, and so there are chloride, there are sodium, there are glucose, there are proteins dissolved in a solution. They are counted, all of them are counted as one. Oo, yes. Your glucose and protein, they have a greater molecular weight than your sodium and chloride, but then in case of osmolality, they are measured or they are counted as one. They are counted as one lang po. Okay? The sodium, that one particle of sodium is counted as one. The one particle of chloride is counted as one. The one particle of protein present in the solution is counted as one. Okay, and so that is osmolality. Again, osmolality reflects the particle concentration, or yes, it is the measure of number of dissolved particles. It is not affected by the size, the molecular weight, or the chemical type, the type of the solute to dissolve. Okay? In For us in the laboratory, osmolality is important in evaluating hydration status. Okay, and so in evaluating hydration status as well as in evaluating renal concentrating ability. Okay, and of course, as well as in what we call this, detecting diabetes insipidus. Okay, and so as what we presented earlier, di ba? Milliosmoles po ang ginamit natin kanina na value, hindi specific gravity. Okay? While your colligative properties, okay, your colligative properties naman, they are the physical properties of a solution that depend only on the number of solute particles, not their identity. Okay, again, not their size, not their molecular weight, ganon. Okay, again, your colligative properties, the physical property of a solution that depend on the number of solute particles, or it depend on the osmolality. Diba? It depends on the osmolality. Okay, not on the identity of the solution. Okay, and so accordingly, you have what we call this four colligative properties. You have your freezing point, your boiling point, the vapor pressure, and osmotic pressure. So, if there is an increased solute concentration, okay, and so if there is an increased solute concentration, it will cause the boiling point and osmotic pressure to increase. It will cause the solution to increase its boiling point and osmotic pressure. And yes, these are colligative properties. If there is an increase in solute concentration sa solution, then it will decrease the freezing point and vapor pressure naman. Okay? Again, please note that these classic colligative properties, they change in predictable ways as the solute concentration increases. Again, if the solute concentration increases, the boiling point and osmotic pressure will increase. In contrast, okay, your freezing point and vapor pressure will decrease naman. Okay? So, paano po in the clinical laboratory? Okay, and so in the clinical laboratory, we utilize osmolality as as a measure. I mean, we utilize osmolality. Okay, your osmolality. Okay, and so in the laboratory, it is measured indirectly sa atin, okay, in the clinical laboratory by observing how the solutes affect the colligative property, no? Okay. And so again, if you increase the solute concentration, the boiling point and osmotic pressure will increase. If you increase the solute concentration, ito po ang mangyayari. Okay, and so please note that these are the bases. Okay, these are the bases for osmolality. Okay, and so meaning, okay, and so changes in solute concentration, or yes, changes in these colligative properties, they are proportional to osmolality. Accordingly, changes in the colligative properties of a solution, they are somewhat proportional to the osmolality of the solution. In short, your osmolality measures the number of dissolved particles in a solution. And yes, for us in the laboratory, we determine osmolality by observing the changes in the colligative properties. Okay, and so especially the freezing point depression, which is actually employed in most of your osmometers. Measurement of your osmolality is performed for a more accurate evaluation of the renal concentrating ability. Osmolality is more accurate than specific gravity. Okay, let's take a look at your freezing point osmometer. Your freezing point osmometer, or your measurement of the freezing point depression, is the first principle incorporated in osmometers. Okay, so how is this done? Your freezing point depression osmometers, they measure the osmolality by supercooling the sample at 27 degrees Celsius, and then they induce freezing, and then of course they detect the resulting temperature rise, the resulting rise in temperature, and converting the degree of freezing point depression into milliosmoles, so using known physical constants, or known physical uh, values. Okay, and so that is for your freezing point osmometer. Again, okay, in freezing point osmometer, you need to supercool at at 27 degrees Celsius, and then it is vibrated to produce crystallization of water in the solution, and the heat of fusion that is produced by the crystallizing water temporarily raises the temperature of the solution to its freezing point. Okay, it will increase the temperature to its freezing point. Okay, there is this thermistor incorporated or present in the osmometer, which will measure the temperature increase. Okay, it will measure the temperature increase. Please note that the temperature increase corresponds to the freezing point of the solution, and this one is converted into milliosmoles. Okay, and so how is this done? Please note that 1 mole of solute will lower the freezing point by 1.86 degrees Celsius. Okay, and so in case of freezing point osmometers, please note that ionized substances, they are more representative of urine and plasma. And for freezing point osmometers, known sodium chloride concentrations are used as reference standards in calculating the osmolarity. You have your vapor pressure osmometers. Okay, and so please note, going back to the colligative properties of a solution, when a solute, or when you increase the solute concentration of a solution, no, the vapor pressure will decrease. Okay, the vapor pressure will decrease. That is a colligative property. Okay, and so yes, in relation to dew point, please note your dew point here is the temperature at which water vapor condenses. So, again, your dew point, that is the temperature at which your water vapor decreases or condenses, sorry. A lower vapor pressure means a decrease in dew point. A lower vapor pressure in a solution, no, Okay, and so will decrease the dew point of a solution. So if you have more solute particles, if you have increased solute particles in a solution, it will decrease the vapor pressure and will decrease the dew point. Again, increased solute concentration in a solution will decrease the vapor pressure and will decrease also the dew point. Please note this relationship, okay, that the relationship of the solute, the vapor pressure, and the dew point allows your osmometers, vapor pressure osmometers, to estimate the osmolality of a solution. Okay, and so yes, although your vapor pressure osmometers are called as vapor pressure osmometers, the instrument does not directly measure vapor pressure, but it measures the dew point. The dew point. Okay, it measures the dew point temperature. So what happens here in vapor pressure osmometers? The sample is placed in a sealed chamber. Okay, it is placed in a sealed chamber. Okay, and so what happens in the sealed chamber? Okay, and so the sample will evaporate, forming a vapor. Okay, in a sealed chamber, the sample will evaporate, forming a vapor. Okay, a thermistor will detect the temperature at which water vapor condenses in a cooled surface. And the depression of the dew point reflects the decrease in the vapor pressure. Okay, again, depression of the dew point by solute parallels the decrease in vapor pressure. Okay, and yes, in case of vapor pressure, it uses microsamples of less than 0.01 ml. Okay, and so please note that you have technical factors that affecting this one, like PMIC serum. Okay, and so will cause displacement of serum water by insoluble lipids. Okay, your lactic acid. Your lactic acid will cause falsely elevated values if the serum samples are not separated or not placed in refrigerator within 20 minutes, and your volatile substances will falsely elevate the measurements accordingly. Okay, it will falsely elevate the measurements accordingly. So concentration or clinical significance or clinical importance of your concentration tests. So you have your, of course, initial evaluation of your renal concentrating ability. It will, of course, evaluate. Okay, and so if your kidneys are capable of concentrating a fluid, and then it will monitor the course of renal disease. It will also monitor fluid and electrolyte therapy, as well as it will also establish a differential diagnosis of hypernatremia and hyponatremia, and it will evaluate uh, secretion of ADH and the renal response to antidiuretic hormone. So those are importance of your uh, concentration tests or tubular reabsorption tests. Normal values for osmolarity. For your normal serum osmolarity, it is 275 to 300 milliosmoles. So for your normal urine osmolarity, it is 50 to 1,400 milliosmoles. And your normal urine to serum osmolarity ratio is 1 is to 1 to 3 is to 1. Please note the 1 is to 1 urine to serum osmolarity ratio here is in case of random samples, while the 3 is to 1 urine to serum osmolarity is seen in case of controlled fluid intake. And again, urine osmolarity is influenced by fluid intake and exercise. You have your free water clearance here. Your free water clearance evaluates the ability of the kidneys to respond to the body's state of hydration. And yes, the first step is to calculate the osmolar clearance and subtract it from the urine volume. This one indicates how much water must be cleared each minute to produce a urine with the same osmolarity as the plasma. Okay, if the result is negative, less water is being excreted. If zero, there is no renal concentration or dilution. If positive, excess water is being excreted. In this one, in case of a negative one, or there is less water that is being excreted, possible that the patient is in a state of dehydration. We will end here. Okay, this has been Gael, reminding you to live fully, love deeply, laugh often, keep learning, and never forget to enjoy the ride. Thank you. Thank you so much. See you around.